So I would say that the most common is saying like, "Oh, well, I already have cyber insurance." And to your point, you're like, "Have you read it?" And it's when you go into like some of the detail, it's like, well, technically, what you have would constitute as insurance. The only problem is it wouldn't actually protect your business, right? It's like you're
Mhm.
insured. It always makes me think of the. I think that's the most common, honestly. It makes me think of the. There's like injury lawyer commercials when there's like a
Yeah.
car accident, and they're like Will saved me or made me 90 times the amount of insurance. And I was like, that's because you bought a crappy insurance policy. If you bought a good insurance policy, you wouldn't need to pay for legal to get you more money because you'd have bought the right insurance to cover your crappy driving.
We are the Keyboard Samurai, podcast about the business of cyber and tech, here to help you or your business improve. Here's your host, Will Clue. Let's hack into it now. Hello, everybody. Welcome back. Another exciting episode, I'm sure, because we're going to talk about insurance, everybody's favorite topic. As always, like, subscribe, do all that crazy stuff, help the channel out. I've got another Will, so this should be confusing to all of you who aren't watching and only listening. No, that's a joke. Will, why don't you give us the 30 seconds of who you are and why we care?
I was going to bring a voice modulator on so I sound just like you, and it'd be really confusing for everybody.
I can I'll start tweaking my thing and have it deep and slowly.
That's it. Yeah, my name's Will. I work for the company called Yukon. A lot of the people in the cybersecurity space remember us as Fifth Wall. We rebranded back in June of last year, so it was at 2025. Don't ask me what Yukon means because I don't know, but also people asked me what Fifth Wall meant and I didn't know either. But the reality is I'll talk about more of it later, but cyber insurance is our thing. Cyber insurance, tech E&O insurance, trying to help MSPs wrap their brains around it. So that's been a big part of what we do. And that's where a lot of our focus lies.
Yeah, I love it. I remember, I would say, I don't know, I'm old now. Probably 15 years ago, like maybe like the Fortune 100 had cyber insurance. And then I started looking around now. Everybody has it. Like every SMB is getting it. Everybody's just like, is it? I'm curious from your. I know why I think it happened, which was, I don't have to actually do this cybersecurity thing. I can just buy insurance instead.
Yeah.
Is that what you kind of saw too?
It's a little weird, right? So our company's been around for a decade now. I think 2015 is when they got started. So a little 11 years, going on 11 years. The first half of that existence was cyber insurance being really cheap. And it was just like agents really were just like,
I don't know how to scope this.
It's like, I kind of know it's important. So, cyber internet stuff and you can insure it, I guess. So here's a really cheap $250 policy that doesn't really cover much, but I don't really know what it should cover anyway, right? And then smack dab 2020 hits, pandemic, everyone's working from home and cybercrime escalated. So all that actually what was crazy is, you were saying like, I don't need the security. At that moment, that's where carriers started to like really examine like, we're going to lose a lot of money if people don't have good security because everyone's going to get hacked. So that's when the security requirements started to come in and all that crazy stuff. But what's really interesting is that what we don't usually hear about is that you had all these policies that everyone was being told was good in 2018, $250 for $250,000 in coverage, right? Oh, that was good. You're protected. Once ransomware became like the norm due to COVID, those policies just weren't good enough anymore. And so not only were people not being renewed because they had bad security, but they were being told, hey, you need limits 4 times the amount of what you were carrying. Also, that's going to cost a lot of money now because we don't know how to run this risk. Like it just got crazy. So understandably, when we started working in the cybersecurity space, everyone was just, am I allowed to say pissed off on this? I'm going to say pissed off. Everyone was just pissed off about cyber insurance. Anytime he brought it up, people just rolled their eyes. They're like, this is the worst. So it's been an interesting journey for sure.
I like it as a consultant, as a managed security provider, because we can always ask, well, do you have it? And they're like, oh yeah, we have it, because everybody has it. And then I can be like, have you read it? And like I was like, do you know what you're supposed to do? And if you don't do it, you're not going to get your money back, kind of thing. Like,
what's crazy is you're right. I mean, there's a lot of layers to this. My wife and I bought the house we're living in now 3 years ago, literally this month. So literally this month, like 4 days from now. So it'll be 3 years on the 28th. And that's when our homeowner's insurance policy renews, right? And I make a habit of looking at that stuff, but at the same time, when you buy a house, the bank just says, "Hey, you need to have a homeowner's insurance policy. It's supposed to cover you for this much." They ask you a couple of questions. It's really easy to get, and then a lot of people never really look at it again until their premium goes up a lot, and all of a sudden their bank's like, "You owe us $300 more a month in escrow," and you're like, "Ugh!" Right? So there's that. Cyber was changing so rapidly and so much, and people didn't really understand what it was protecting them from. And I think a lot of people still don't. Like we look at it and like, oh yeah, it's protection from a breach, but like what does that even mean? And is that like when I talk to a lot of business owners, they still look at it from like, I'm not being targeted, I'm too small, you know, my cybersecurity buddy down the street who handles my security, he's got me taken care of. He's got a policy, I'm good. Like it's just all these it's not your typical objections, which are like the normal sales objections are like, oh no, I'm good. Most of the time it's not I'm good. It's literally when they're talking to you, you're like, you have no idea the risk, right? That you're just sitting on,
I'm curious on that aspect too. Like what are the most, like, we've both had this conversation in different aspects. I'm sure you from an insurance policy and me from a cybersecurity state, like an assessment. But when they say you're good, what are the like top 3 things you always find that makes you like go, no, you're not? Like you don't have this, and this.
In terms of security or
like when they think they're good with their insurance, like what is it they think they, because that whole like I have an assumption because I signed a piece of paper, but really I don't know anything because I didn't read it. What are those assumptions that they're screwing up?
I would say one of the most common is thinking that so I would say that the most common is saying like, oh well, I already have cyber insurance. And to your point, you're like, have you read it? And it's when you go into like some of the detail, it's like, well, technically what you have would constitute as insurance. The only problem is it wouldn't actually protect your business, right? It's like you're insured. It always makes me think of I think that's the most common, honestly. It makes me think of there's like injury lawyer commercials when there's like a car accident and they're like, Will saved me or made me 90 times the amount of insurance. And I was like, that's because you bought a crappy insurance policy. If you bought a good insurance policy, you wouldn't need to pay for legal to get you more money because you'd have bought the right insurance to cover your crappy driving. Like it's that kind of mindset. And I say crappy driving because that's the other piece, right? There's a lot of the objection is, well, again, my IT guy covers me down the street. I'm protected, when in reality, year over year, you're getting the same statistic that the majority of incidents are due to someone doing something stupid, clicking a link, sending, falling for an invoice manipulation scam, something like that, right? Like it's and it's not saying that they're being stupid, but it's something happens that's just like user error, right? Like they did something that messed everything up, and that usually leads to the incident. And almost every time, like I'm reading cyber news, and even if it's a larger organization or a smaller one, it usually has a line in there near the beginning that says the initial point of attack was because so-and-so's user credentials were compromised. And it's like, well, was it bad password hygiene? Was it just that they let the person in on, unintentionally? They did some screen share thing that they weren't supposed to do. Who knows? Right. But it's like, it's so easy. Even someone like myself, who's very cyber adept, right? There are things that sometimes you look at and you're like, I could go down that route, and if I did, it could be a real problem. Like I'm looking at this thing, and it's like it's asking me to give permissions that I really don't feel comfortable giving permission to. And then it's like, if I'm someone who doesn't understand what that means, and I just do it because it's easy, I mean, and then you have, I can ramble on about AI. Now we're in the AI
Oh yeah,
generation, right? And it's like, dude, I just spent
your Clawbot does it for you.
yeah. And there is some cool stuff though. Like so we work in the insurance space. CRMs for insurance traditionally suck. They're just terrible. Like
Mm,
most CRMs are meant for sell to and rarely
right.
sell through partnerships, right? And then on top of that, with insurance, you're often relying on the sales cycle of another for you to close your business. Like especially in the layer that we sit at in the insurance world. So we're a very specific position because we're not an agent, but we're also not an insurance carrier. So we're kind of sitting in
Mm,
the middle. So you're relying on agents and MSPs to talk to their clients, and like it gets really convoluted. So tracking that well in an insurance in a tracking that well in a CRM is difficult. So I'm like over here creating local apps with Claude that
yeah.
exist purely on my machine and have no internet access, and that's one thing. But you could see someone be like, okay, now I want to make this available to everybody at my
Yeah.
organization. So how do I put that online? And then they end up putting it in, they create a
A
web app,
public one.
which cool, created a web app. That's awesome, but they're not putting it behind any sort of
Yeah.
Cloudflare. They're not putting it beside any sort of protections, right? So it's just out there, and then they're uploading client data to it, and you're like, who knows? So it's that kind of thing where now you have AI telling you to do stuff, and you don't understand the security behind it, and or that you should even think about the security. And AI's like, oh yeah, you should just do this. That makes it really easy. Oh, go here and click your profile picture and grab your API key and just plug it. Like it's that kind of stuff where it tells you how to do the thing because you asked it to do the thing. But if you're asking it to do the thing without any security knowledge, that's where things can get really interesting. So um, that's why, I mean, that's where I really, when it comes to cyber insurance, I'm really interested in the future of it because agentic AI is definitely changing up the nature of the beast.
Yeah, no doubt. It just as you're saying, like just generally speaking, I think I don't know if I read this year's, but last year's like data breach report from IBM was, I think like 50% of breaches are basically human error, and that's it. That's like clicking a link or misconfiguration. Usually,
Yeah.
usually, right? It's a person. Like there's there's no control in place. Well, I mean, a good zero trust framework is probably your best bet against that, right?
Yeah.
That's God, I love it. So, um, what else about cyber insurance? Do like what like think about not let's go from like we talked about like the business owner. What about like the CISO and the CIO? What do they what don't they know? What kind of things do you think they're assuming and you're kind of having to have a different conversation with them?
You know what's interesting is the CISO tends to get it, um,
Mhm.
in the
I would
sense
hope
of
so.
yeah, the CISO tends to get it. The real challenge is the CISO isn't the one you need to convince about it. So the CISO's
Mhm.
like, I talked to a CISO or a VCISO about something. I still don't know if it's CISO or CISO, so I'm going to say both just for fun. But you talk to them and they're like nodding and they're like, yeah, yeah, we need this. It's like I understand what all these different attack vectors are and I know how they work, right? And it's like, oh yeah, well you're going to need, based on your revenue, your industry, you're going to need these security measures. Oh yeah, yeah, great, we can get those in place, no problem. Then you get to the point where it's like, okay, we actually need the insurance policy. Now you need to convince the CFO, and that's where the real
Mhm.
challenge comes in because the CISO is going to have your back, but at the end of the day, if the CFO doesn't understand the risk, and when you go in and you try to talk to a CFO about, I mean, you can kind of float the cyber crime, I guess, be like, well, what about e-theft or whatever? It's like, well, isn't my CISO supposed to protect me from that? Like, I don't know that kind of stuff, right? But
Yeah.
that's where we have found the biggest challenge, I think, for a lot of people trying to have the insurance conversation is, especially when it's a CISO or an MSP advocating for it, is the inability or the maybe not inability, but the challenge they have with explaining it in such a way that someone who has no tech
Yeah.
understanding can understand, right? And that's where translating your risk into dollars is really important. You see a lot of companies today. We're doing it. Threat Captain is doing it. There's a couple other ones who are quantifying risk. Even carriers are starting to quantify risk based on their past claims history. Um,
Mhm.
and I would say even for MSPs, I mean, this is insurance, but this is cybersecurity sales too. Being able to have those conversations where you can go into the boardroom and speak from a place of financial loss if you don't
Yeah.
have peak security. Like, hey, look, like this is the way risk works. As a cybersecurity professional, I'm going to try and do everything I can to protect you and lower your risk. Let's lower your risk as low as possible, but you need to understand like it's impossible to completely eliminate risk. So for everything that I can't lower, we need to transfer the rest with insurance. And here's why. Someone in your specific industry, your revenue, they see a ransomware attack, they're looking at, I'm going to throw a number at them, 2.1 million
Yeah.
in potential loss due to things like downtime, due to things like needing to pay employees and not making any money, having to, legal fees, forensics fees, like all this stuff builds up and builds up. And if you can show that in reality, that's where the CFO can look at it and say, oh, so you're saying it's either 2.1 million if we happen to suffer an incident because you can't eliminate all risk. I understand that part. Or I pay, a couple $1,000s for a cyber policy. I'm going to pay a
Right.
couple $1,000s for a cyber policy. Like the life of the company, I doubt you're ever going to hit, I don't know if you're ever going to pay millions and millions and millions of dollars
In
across,
insurance. Yeah.
on your insurance policy. And you know what? If you do, because you're a large company and you're paying $100,000 a year in a policy, that means your revenue is so good that hundred
Yeah, I was
thousand
gonna say
probably
when
shouldn't
you're
matter.
making billions, 100
Yeah,
grand for insurance seems kind of light if I'm being
exactly.
honest.
So it's like, would you rather
Yeah.
pinch pennies or protect from a major catastrophic loss to your business?
So that's interesting because I talk a lot about that translation, about CISOs and just technical leaders in general, how they would, and usually I come, we always come from a place of like asset management, visibility, criticality. Like, even if you don't know the numbers specifically, you can ask the CFO, well, if this system goes down, how much money do you lose per minute, per hour, per day, right? And
Yeah,
then they can do the math. I never really thought about needing to do that for cyber insurance because I kind of just assumed the CFO would be like, "Oh, it's insurance, we need it," right, and sign off on it. So that's interesting to me.
yeah, and it helps you determine like, and granted, you're not soliciting, but unless you're licensed, but at the same time, you can have the conversations. It helps them understand like what limits they actually need to be going for here.
Right.
Because you could often go into an agency and say, "Hey, I need cyber insurance," and unless you have a contract that requires like 5 million or something, the average agent who's still trying to figure out the cyber insurance piece because it changes a lot is probably just gonna be like, "Okay, let's get you $1 million policy." But if you're talking to a company that's like, "Hey, over the course of 15 days, my revenue is gonna tank. I'm gonna lose like $3 million." Now all of a sudden it's like, okay, but you need way more than $1 million in coverage, right? So it's helping
Yeah.
them understand why a recommendation for a particular limit might be given, as opposed to just going with what, before COVID it was 250K was the limit. Now after
Right.
COVID, everyone started doing 1 million, and that hasn't really changed. But in
Is that
reality,
something
it's
they're
changed.
just pulling out of the air, or is it because again, like if I'm super like, most of us are like really analytical, especially when it comes to risk. Like there's
Yep.
quantification. Like I want to know what could put me out of business and have enough to protect me. But like are they just being like, oh, $1 million policies? Because our life insurance is the same way. Most of us, we all got like, oh, how much is your house? What do you owe in debt? All right, you need 2x. Like it's kind of loosey goosey. Is it similar in the cyberspace?
I think a big part of it is it continues to be the misunderstanding of that quantified risk, right? So
Hmm.
when you don't understand all the components that go into a loss, and this is where, so when I had to take you have to take an exam to get licensed in most states in insurance. When I
Hmm.
took my exam, it was I want to say 160 question test, and I had one question about cyber insurance on the exam. And in the studying materials, there was one page out of like a massive textbook that was dedicated to cyber insurance, right? So the majority of agents who have been doing this business for 30 years and have not had to take any sort of relicensing, they have to do
Oh yeah.
continuing ed every 2 years or 3 years, depending on the state. But it's like they're not being mandated to do anything cyber related. So how many of them are actually learning about the advancements in cyber? And even then, cyber changes so much that if you're doing continuing education, you're doing an hour course on cyber once every 2 years, like you're
That's
already
yeah,
behind the eight ball. So
yeah.
it adjusts so much that understanding the nature of what's even at risk in a loss and what's actively being covered by a cyber policy, I just think it's exhausting to a lot of agents to even try and think about, because there's at, and then take with that the fact that cyber premium, like the amount an agent would make in commission off of a cyber policy, is still so small compared to the rest of the book for that particular client that they're going to
Really?
make. Yeah, I mean, that's not always the case. There are some clients that are significant cyber risks, and maybe they'll put more effort into those, like an an auto dealer, a construction company, manufacturer that's making a good amount of money. Like, we write some auto dealers where we see upwards of like 90 to 100,000 in premium because they're just the nature of the business. But for the majority of risks, we're still seeing like $2,000, $3,000 policies. Meanwhile, they're writing a commercial liability policy that's like 20K. Of course, they're going to put more work into that than this small little cyber piece, especially when they don't understand it. So they're just like, all right, $1 million, you need $1 million in coverage. And it kind of is this arbitrary. It's not arbitrary. It's just before COVID, 250,000 was enough. After COVID, it's $1 million. That's what you need,
$1 million.
right?
That's what you need.
Yeah.
So, is that somewhere, like, I think of it as a consultant, is that somewhere, I assume the insurance companies would be happy, like, if I go in and help do the quantification and figure out and go like, no, you don't need $1 million, you need 4.
Yeah.
Right. And then the basic, I mean, no, if I go to the insurance broker agent, whoever they're buying it from, and say, hey, no, this isn't enough, you need to sell them more, nobody's going to say no, right?
The agent won't say no.
Yeah,
and that's the other challenge. Is it's like, imagine. I mean, I feel like everyone in the cybersecurity industry at some point went through imposter syndrome, right? Where it's like, I
still
kind of
does
understand what I'm talking about. I don't freaking know. So, it's like that kind of thing. Now imagine being an agent and having to go before your client and recommend 300 or 3 million in limits or 4 million in limits, but not knowing anything about the underlying coverage that is cyber other than the word ransomware, right? Like, it's hard to make that sale. And I think that's the biggest hurdle that we've seen for agents and MSPs is agents don't know how to talk about cyber, and MSPs are cyber insurance, and MSPs are afraid to talk about cyber insurance for liability reasons. So you have this gap, this protection gap, where it's like you have two parties who, one needs to be an expert in insurance, the other needs to be an expert in cyber, but neither of them really feel comfortable getting into the nitty-gritty of the cyber insurance piece. But both need to be able to have those conversations. It's really interesting.
So so I never thought of that. You just said the liability. Is there, like, as a consulting firm, as a managed service firm, if you're making recommendations on what they should have, is that a liability?
No, I mean, it depends on who you talk to. There's everyone you talk to in the space is, there's always the anytime there's the potential for a liability threat, everyone's like, don't touch it, don't even go near it.
Yeah.
Don't 99-foot pole, like that's the Grinch, don't go near it, right? Like, it's that kind of mindset. Really, when it comes to insurance, like, you can't be soliciting insurance, right? If you're not licensed in insurance, you technically can't solicit. I think recommendations on some level, like, you want to be careful to be like, hey, I recommend this particular carrier, right? Like, you probably shouldn't be doing that. But there is the recommendation of saying like, hey, I'm just looking at your potential loss, and over the course of 14 days, you're telling me you could lose 2 million. Why would you take a $1 million policy?
Right.
Like, I'm trying to help out your business here. That's okay. You're just throwing numbers at them. You're not giving them advice on what policy to take, and you're not going up to them and saying, go buy this insurance policy. You're just saying, look, if you're going to go shopping for an insurance policy, consider 2 million limits. I think that's fine.
Yeah. Because that's the world every VCISO lives in, whether they're independent or contracted. Like, my company does that. We do managed GRC programs, VCISO. So, like, the whole company, like, we got a consultant there that's providing that advice. We want to be able to help them. So,
yeah.
Well, let me ask you this, because I could keep talking, which is crazy. We're talking about insurance.
I
can keep talking about it forever.
It's weird, right?
Wind down here. What's your advice, your guidance? Like, what's your sage wisdom that you can share to owners and CISOs or CIOs, anybody that has to make this decision about when they're looking at their cyber insurance?
Like, if they have to make a decision about what to buy?
Yeah, just like, what's your general guidance? What do you see them messing up, and get a little
So we hit on the first one, and that's the first one's quantify your risk. We talked about that. That's the first piece. Understand what's actually at risk here in terms of financial dollars and cents. The second is when you're looking for coverage, don't take anything that they're saying we're just going to add it on to your GL or your business owner's policy. Like if it's just if you hear the word add-on or endorsement cyber, just not the word endorsement. Endorsements are good. Endorsements in insurance, get real nerdy for a second. When you have an insurance policy, like a full-on insurance policy, you're going to have these things called endorsements. It literally just, you can think of it like an add-on. It's like downloadable content onto your insurance policy, right? So it's something additional that's not on the main policy. So here's this additional thing, right? But if your cyber policy in and of itself is an endorsement, so if your cyber policy is downloadable content onto your general liability policy, something's probably wrong, because downloadable content is like a quarter of the cost of the actual thing, right? Like that's an issue. So your endorsement policies are bad. Having endorsements on your cyber policy can often be a good thing. But what you want to look for is what they call comprehensive cyber. So it's a standalone policy, whether that's cyber or tech E&O, because for the cybersecurity people who might be listening to this, you're going to want tech E&O. For business owners, if you do any sort of tech service, you want tech errors and omissions combined with cyber. So it gets kind of funky, but really think the phrase comprehensive. If you're going to your agent, if you're going to talk to someone about cyber, say, is this a comprehensive cyber policy or is this just tacked on to something else? I think that's a really good place to start, because at least if it's comprehensive, you're getting, I'm going to phrase this. A comprehensive policy is going to look at more potential attack vectors. So it's going to say, hey, if you have an incident due to this, an incident due to this, an incident due to this, there's coverage, right? Ransomware, social engineering, business email compromise, dependent network interruptions, some app that you rely on to do business goes down, you still have coverage for it, right? A normal add-on policy to an endorsement, it's going to be like, oh, you had an attack, here's some money to help with forensics, right? Like it's not doing it for you. So that's really where my biggest advice would be, is like, understand your risk, understand what's at stake, and then make sure you have a policy that's kind of running the gamut of attack vectors, because it's really important.
I love that. And I just learned something. So that's fantastic. I appreciate it, Will. Where can everybody find you on the interwebs if they want to?
Oh man, my LinkedIn's a little weird. Oh, you put it there. It's Wilbo, but with a 1 instead of an L. That's the key. I don't know why I did that. That's my gamer tag, sort of. Wilbo Baggins. But
I love it.
And Wilbo with an L was taken. Oh, there we go. Yeah, Wilbo with an L was taken, so I had to go Wilbo Baggins with a 1, and that's just kind of stuck. So yeah, Wilbo. LinkedIn.com/in/Wilbo. Also Yukon.com. That's Yukon with a K, UKON, not YUKON. Again, I don't know what it means, but it's there. The color scheme's cool, so I'm about it. And yeah, I mean, it's really always happy to have conversations about this stuff. I know it's complicated, I know it's confusing, but at the end of the day, I mean, those, if you can really stick to those points, understand the financial nature of your risk, understand that your cybersecurity guy, your vCISO, your IT friend, they cannot remove 100% of risk. Anyone who says they can is lying. And so for the remainder of that risk, you got to get insurance that's going to cover the rest. That's what it's all about. It's all a game of risk reduction to the point of risk transference, because you can't have risk elimination.
That's it. Transfer, accept, and reduce, mitigate.
That's it.
Thanks, Will. This has been awesome, man. I appreciate you, Fred.
This was great, man.
Thanks.
Thanks for listening. Be sure to like and subscribe. Follow Will and the podcast on LinkedIn/WillClue. Visit WillClue.me for information on services he offers to help your cyber or tech business grow. Until next time, Synaculator.